Hey, how are you? Happy Wednesday to you. Andrea Pennington here in the place to be. I am getting ready for the personal branding boot camp, and it's been one of those kind of jam-packed weeks where I have so much on my plate I can barely keep it straight. What's up, Ingrid? Nice to see you again. And what I just started doing is the interviews with some of the authors from the book Time to Rise. And it's a collection of personal stories from 29 inspiring change makers from around the world, who are each sharing about how they've overcome some of life's challenges and struggles to really step out on their own, living in alignment with their authentic self. And some of the stories are like things that would like blow your mind wide open. And so I've started doing some interviews, and that's what's inspired me for today's live discussion. What's up, Maureen? How are you, darling? What up, Trevor? How are you? Good to see some familiar peeps up in here. And so this topic for today is, how do you take a leap of faith when there's no solid ground beneath you? One of my co-authors in the book, Time to Rise, his name is Romeo Cournal, and he's this intuitive life coach. And it was fun because this was forcing him to do an interview in English. He's, here on the French Riviera and usually does all of his great YouTube videos in French. But he talks about jumping into the void and how some of his life journey and professional journey caused him to literally take a leap of faith. So that's what has inspired me to ask you, what do you need to see in front of you or feel beneath you before you will make a leap? Whether that's jumping into a new relationship, starting a new business, launching some new program, even moving house. How much do you have to feel like you've got everything in place and worked out? That's what I want to know. I want to know if you really can go by faith, the evidence of things unseen, or are you somebody who really, really, really needs to have everything like worked out? So if you would chime in, write in, what kind of person are you? I'm gonna share this over to wherever land, to my personal profile, so that the whole world can be with us in this conversation. How about that? So, Maureen, you're so silly. But thank you. Glad you liking the hairdo. I did it for y'all, for you tonight, if you're coming to the Q&A session. And, I know Maureen knows a little bit about taking a leap of faith, because you got on a plane, girl. She left New York, came to London, which is how we met at Expert Empires earlier this year in London, where I was headlining with Gary Vaynerchuk. And she's just like, I think I'm going to go to this event. And Trevor, you too. You just decided, hey, I'm going to go to this event. And you also flew from the United States, came to our Speak from the Heart event. And yeah, so you guys both know about what it takes. So I'm curious if you would share, what did it take for you? Trevor says, sometimes I just got to clear my mind and push all the doubts away and just do it. Yes. So that's kind of, what it takes. It's that clearing away the doubts, clearing away the fear, and jumping into the void. Ann Taylor says, your daughter's mental health struggles made you jump into the void. Scary, but now you see a dialogue happening. What do you mean by dialogue? Tell me about that. What does that mean? You see a dialogue? Tell me, because I'm really curious about it. I think for me, I jump a lot. Hey, Beatrice. I'm not afraid to jump, obviously. People ask me all the time, like, oh my gosh, how did you leave America, leave this great career, and move to the south of France? With my daughter was what? 4.5 or just turning 5 at the time. Because I think one of the central themes that has come through as people have been sharing with me from the book, Time to Rise, there has been this very common theme about intuition. Hey, Katrina, that's one of our co-authors from the book, Time to Rise. And it's been this knowingness. And some of the words that came out is resonance, feeling a certain vibe, a certain knowing, something in your bones that just tells you this is right. And even if you can't see all of the details or see what you are stepping into, you haven't worked it out with your spreadsheet, your pro forma, and all your projections, but something within you said, this is right for me. One of the things that I am always struck by is how many times we distrust that gut instinct or that intuition. And to your point, Trevor, Derry's philosophy, it's also mine, is this concept about regret. Out of all the human emotions, regret is probably the one that bothers me the most. I don't like to feel regret. So when I look over my life and I see a pattern of things that I don't get done, I don't follow through on, if I start to feel that weight of regret, like, oh, I wish I had done that, or I wish I hadn't done that, it gets to me. And so I've started to live my life, I guess, over the last 10 years with saying, I don't want to have any regret. I don't want to have that feeling, so I will check in and say, what feels right to me? Because if I think about, just like what you're saying, Trevor, will I feel regret if I do this? Will I feel regret if I don't do it? And then I check in with that feeling. And, it's come up for me a number of times over the last several years, and it allows me to take a leap of faith. And even if things don't turn out well, I'm able to say, well, I went with my gut. I knew what I didn't want to feel, and that is regret. So what about you guys? What do you need before you will take a leap and start some, audacious project or share your heart or your vulnerability with someone? Anne says, when you talk about mental health, you see others come out and share their story too. So dialogues remove the stigma. Yes. And Anne, that is exactly why I shared my story on that TEDx stage. It's why I shared my story in the first group book that I participated in. It was a book called Heart to Heart, The Path to Wellness. And to be honest, for me, I just felt like the pain of hiding my mental health struggles, the anxiety and the depression and the self-loathing, the pain of hiding it, and that waking up in the middle of the night and in the morning feeling like just awful, like I didn't want to live my life anymore, and feeling that I wasn't good enough, and just worrying about, what have I forgotten? What are people going to find out? That energy that I spent in hiding finally went so much inside that I had to just say, you know what? This is my life. And the one phrase that kept sticking in my head, and I ask people this all the time, is when you're considering doing something, and part of our human instinct to wonder what other people are going to think, which is, it's natural, we are pack animals, we traveled in herds. Our ancestors needed to be accepted by a tribe to ensure our survival. So it's natural for us to kind of want to be accepted and get along with people. But when that instinct comes up, higher consciousness says we should be able to check in and say, do I want to go in with the crowd, go out like that or not? And what I had to finally realize, when I used to have that reflex of wondering, oh God, if people find out that I'm depressed, you know, they're not going to like me, or they're not going to think I have it all together and all that crap. I realized, what does it matter? If someone understands that I'm depressed or that I failed at some project, what does it matter? If they're not the ones feeding me, if they're not the ones furthering my cause and helping my business, if they're not, you know, my lover or my partner, if they're not adding so much fun and enjoyment and fulfillment to my life, what do I care what they think? Because when I wake up in the morning, I'm the one waking up in this skin. And when I was waking up full of anxiety and depression, I realized nobody else's opinion really mattered at the end of the day. And as I just decided to just come clean, it was more kind of just my own confessional. But having that dialogue is what removed the stigma. And one of my new friends and colleagues, Dr. Juicy Jill Stalker, she said that when she first saw me on one of these crazy Facebook Lives, she said she was shocked that here I was, this doctor, admitting that I had depression. And the more she kind of heard me, saw me, she realized, wow, it does remove the stigma when we, even as a doctor, can admit, I'm just human. I got issues. But you got them too. No, so anyway, that's what's up. So let me see what y'all are talking about. What's up, Nino? Good to have you in the heezy. Cavell, good to see you too, from Trinidad and Tobago, baby. Loving it. Yes, Team Time to Rise in the house. Sarah Kate Brandis is also in the book. She writes about finding her why. So Maureen says you get a feeling in your stomach. Oh, you got a feeling in your stomach back in, what was that, May, and you just felt like you needed to be there. And how did that turn out for you? I know, you met me, and yeah, you saw Gary V. Yeah, I know that's what you came for. But it was fabulous, right? Romeo, I was just mentioning you and this idea of jumping into the void. And yes, Anne, the pain of hiding is awful, and it only feeds the stigma. And it's what I find is that we spend so much energy constructing this false sense of self and then trying to live up to it. And we spend so much energy hiding our flaws or, you know, whatever. And all of that energy could be put to something useful, like our own healing or creating a new project or supporting other people. And once I started to just break free from the drama of caring what other people thought, then I could just be me. And it started to attract other people who were like, wow, I feel the same way. And now we've created this tribe of people that just supports and shows love and I don't know, that's what we do. We sprinkle shine. We don't sprinkle shade over here. Yes, Romeo, it's a wonderful jumping. And there's no solid ground, so, well, that's a good idea. I love the way you put that. Well, there's no solid ground, which means you can't crash. I love it. That's right. You can jump and wait for the ground to materialize underneath you. So, Maureen, you say, you feel like if you don't take a leap of faith, then there's no action taken. Without action, there's no reaction. You always hope for the best reaction, of course. Yep, I hear you. What's up, Nadej? Welcome. Yes, we all have mental health just like physical health. And I think that's the reason that I am so passionate about bringing the stories of people from around the world who are, you know, we come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic status, and yet we're all dealing with this same challenge of balancing physical health and our mental health and our spiritual health. And I feel like if we paid more attention to just owning the fact that as a human, we're not even meant to be perfect. Like that idea that I carried for so many years that I had to be perfect, that everything had to be right. You know, I had to get straight A's, and then that converted into everything else, from the way I went to medical school and the way I practiced medicine. And then, of course, being on TV, it was like I felt like everything had to be perfect. And the reality is, there is no such thing as perfection. And even when I tried my best to get everything perfectly right and everything was perfectly scripted, it still didn't please everyone, you know? Or I'd find people that would be like, that was too scripted and too poised and too polished. It was like, so why even strive for perfection if you just accept that as a human creature, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to stumble. We're all going to fall. But the whole point of this life of ours is to grow and evolve. Because as we start to identify with who we really are as a spirit connected to the divine source of life, then we realize how silly it is to judge ourselves and to judge other people based on human flaws, when that's not even who we really are. Who we really are is the consciousness, the soul, the spirit that is driving this vehicle. And when we can learn to identify with who we really are, we are the awareness, we are that consciousness that comes from love, then you kind of realize, all right, you know, in this lifetime, this is the body I got. And whether you believe that as a soul you chose your parents, you chose these circumstances so that you could come through life and experience certain challenges or work out certain drama and karma from the past, it really matters not. The point is that you are a spiritual being. You are the consciousness. So judging yourself against some standard of perfection that is false. It's like this man-made myth, right? Shimoni, you just joined us right at the most interesting time. So we were just talking about what it takes to have a leap of faith. And Shimoni, you shared something earlier this week with me about just feeling the sense of resonance. And I find that when we get with people with whom we resonate, when we're just being ourselves, because, you know, I'm just being me now. No more pretense, no more faking it, no more trying to be whatever, just me. But as I realize more people just are attracted, not because we're being fake, it allows them to be at ease. And then we can all kind of like say, well, what if we got together and pushed ourselves a little higher? Like, if we really are spiritual beings, and if all the yogis and the mystics from time immemorial who've had these superpowers, siddhis as they call them, you know, the ability to know something before you quote unquote know it, that intuition, that ESP, being to levitate, being able to be in two places at once. If we consider that maybe as spiritual beings, we could operate outside of the laws of the earth by tapping into the laws of the universe, then what would happen if, like the Justice League or, you know, X-Men, we got together and decided, hey, you've got some superpowers, I've got some superpowers. I may not be absolutely perfect at working them out, but the more I practice and the more we create this field of opportunity and possibility, we can elevate our expression of those powers. And then when we tap into the consciousness of right now, like the consciousness that's happening on this planet that says we are one family, one human family, even if people are acting a straight up fool, we really are one family. And even if people are still kind of asleep, as everyone else is starting to get woke, this awakening takes place and we tap into the consciousness that says, hey, honey, it's time to wake up. It's time to care for the planet. It's time to care for our brothers and sisters. It's time to re-evaluate how we look at wealth and success. And what if we raised each other up? What if? So there it is. What if? Hello, Monica. Nice to have you here. Shimoni says, authenticity allows the right people to be magnetically drawn to each other. Amen to that. So like that whole concept of the law of attraction, which seems to be like the hot topic in my community. I think it's hilarious because I tried to avoid the whole law of attraction conversation because I felt like people were missing so much of it. And I know that's not original. A lot of people have been saying that. What's up, Odell, Ava, Andrea? But the law of attraction and our ability to tap into the energy, the information of this field that we live in, it is real. But back in 2003, when I was finishing my first book, The Pennington Plan, I took a real chance. It was a chance at the time. It was a leap of faith because my brand at the time, I was on TV as the medical director and spokesperson for Discovery. And being on TV every day and being seen as this medical journalist, it was really challenging for me because I had studied Chinese medicine there where the dear Monica Wisdom was at. I was in St. Louis at Washington University School of Medicine, which is a very hoity-toity research institution. And so the idea that you could work with energy, you know, that I was learning about how acupuncture placed, I first started with ear acupuncture. I was introduced to it by my mom, who was trained at the Georgia Mental Health Institute as she was working with people who were dealing with addiction. And when she told me that she was putting in these little ear needles, now there's no drug in them. They're not hypodermic needles where you're injecting. There are these little tiny needles about the size of a strand of hair. And she was seeing people get calm and detox off of drugs. And they weren't in the hospital. So I was like, wait a minute. I had just finished at my very fancy pants university. Very fancy, yes, Monica. But I had just finished there at WashU, at Barnes Hospital, a rotation where we were in the psych ward. We were seeing people as they were detoxing from cocaine and heroin and all that kind of stuff. Now, you've seen movies, right, where people are, you know, these junkies are withdrawing from substances like cocaine and whatnot. And they're all shaking and they're, you know, frothing at the mouth and they seem so unstable. Well, it's not pleasant for the brain and the body to go through withdrawal from an addiction. So when my mom told me that she was helping women who were postpartum or they were still pregnant and they were addicted to crack cocaine. Okay, now, you know, that's aging us, right? This was in the 90s when the crack cocaine epidemic was like rolling. Salut, Audrey. So it was crazy because she was telling me that they were detoxing as outpatients, meaning they weren't in the hospital hooked up to an IV, getting fluids and all that stuff. They were as outpatients. And they were in like kind of a 12-step program. They would come, they would get their little needles. And I'm like, that's not possible. And that's actually not humane. I was like, Mom, that's crazy. And she was like, nope. They get 45 minutes of needles. They come, they have some counseling. Then I thought, oh, it's just my mom. For those of you that have ever met Dr. P, she was like the oracle from the Matrix. People just were drawn to her. They would just tell her all of their problems and she would be able to work it out and just give the kind of energy that would transform. Now, I don't know why I thought that could work for drug addiction, but I was thinking, oh, it's just, my mom's special sauce. But it was one Thanksgiving, we were on break from medical school and I flew back to Atlanta and I was like, all right, stick your little magic needles in me. What's up, Zazie? So she did. She gave me the NADA protocol, which my dear friend Gegga has recently become certified in. And so this NADA protocol, you're putting in, NADA is what I'm saying. It's this acu-detox. 6 little needles. 6 little needles. Like Shenmen, which is the spirit gate. Other things that correspond to like the kidney, the lung, the heart, the liver, you know, organs of our body that naturally detox and get rid of drugs and other things that we're exposed to. And 0.0 was one that we would magically put in that just brought calm to the body and the brain. So I went to her and I said, okay, give me one of these acupuncture treatments. This sounds just crazy, you know, coming from my very fancy medical university. And sure enough, she put in these acupuncture needles, put me in a little chilled out chair, dimmed the lights, put on some music, and I felt this rush of energy. Yes, NADA. Thank you, Zazie. I felt the rush, this euphoric rush that heroin people, I've never taken heroin, but heroin addicts have told me they get that kind of rush and that flush. And I felt euphoria, and then I felt tears streaming down my face, and I was just like, what is this? You know, at that point, I had never experienced anything like that. And sure enough, I went back to my very fancy university, and I convinced our dean, Dean Peck, never forget that man, I convinced him to let me go to the Bronx, New York. Imagine me in my little white coat. But there was this guy, Dr. Michael Smith, who was one of the pioneers who brought the AcuDetox protocol from China to America in the 70s. And he was training doctors and nurses and other addiction professionals in the NADA protocol. So I went there and I spent, I think, 5 weeks putting in needles, watching people detox before my eyes, not in the hospital, in a little rinky-dink treatment center at the Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. I mean, this was not your pretty little medical rotation. This was pretty hardcore. And so I came back saying, there is clearly something going on with this thing that the Chinese call qi. And if you're telling me that with needles, tiny little needles, we can get people off of drugs, off of addiction. And what my mother saw was she saw that people, these women who were postpartum, they had just delivered babies, and because they were addicted, their babies were taken from them, you know, put in state and foster homes and all this stuff. Maureen says, that's my hood. I ain't talking bad about it. I'm just saying. My mom was telling me that these women, after getting just a week or so of this treatment, they were suddenly they were, you know, combing their hair and they were dressing a little better. And after a couple of weeks, they're speaking nicer and without all that anger. And then soon they were starting to petition to the court to get their kids back. The transformation that happened with this process was kind of mind-blowing for me. So to have seen it happen with these people myself, I realized there's a lot more to healing body and brain and mind and finding a sense of purpose and meaning in life. The normal American medical or the allopathic medical model doesn't account for that. So I'm thinking, okay, this is crazy. And it just so happened that this was 1997 that I got my training. And it was beautiful timing because they happened to be having the NIH consensus conference about acupuncture. So I was able to fly in, be there, and listen to presentation after presentation of these hoity-toity research types talking about the clinical studies that showed that acupuncture worked better than certain drug protocols like the antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. They were showing that it was either better than placebo or the same sort of efficacy without all the side effects and the cost. So it was like I was exposed to a whole new world because now I did have that research arm that WashU had introduced me to, and I had been sort of indoctrinated into by that point. It was my 3rd year of med school, so it was like, you know, you get brainwashed. Did I say that out loud? Okay, maybe it's not everyone, but I was brainwashed, definitely in that, Yes, it does sound like my next documentary. That's what I'm talking about, Monica. Like, I feel like, and yes, Margareta, shout out to the holistic approaches. I feel like my contribution to the world coming next up is a documentary series about the variety of holistic, alternative, energy healing approaches, positive psychology, all of that. Because when my mind was thinking that the medical model that we were taught in med school is right, you know, there's this whole ego complex. It's changing. I'm not saying it's currently that way. I mean, I graduated from med school 17 years ago. It is changing. There are a lot more integrative doctors, a lot more DOs like the juicy, Dr. Juicy Jill. You know, I think if I had known about osteopathy, I would have become a DO. And I know that you're on board, Margareta. But yeah, Anne, we are whole humans, and we can't just treat the symptoms. But that is what the American sick care model is set up for. It's designed to treat symptoms. We wait till people break down. Now, of course, it has changed. There are people who are considering preventive medicine, like eating a plant-based diet, getting more exercise, meditation, all these sorts of things, supplementation, spiritual practice, prayer, all of those things are preventive, and they're shown to reverse heart disease, protect the brain from Alzheimer's, help people recover from stroke, from heart attacks, avoid cancer and diabetes. Like, it's bananas what we now know. And that's what I am really passionate about letting people know about. Now, most people are waking up. There are a lot of great documentaries out there and a lot of people speaking up about their experience. Like, antidepressants didn't work for me. You know, it might have, in my really dark moments, kind of took the edge off, but from the weight gain and kind of dulling my senses, it wasn't a solution. Now, certainly, if someone is suicidal, if you are really having a psychotic episode or a bipolar episode, get medical attention so you can at least get some sort of stability in your brain chemistry. But for long term, to really balance your brain and start living in harmony with your body and with nature, there's a whole host of things that we can be doing that don't cost as much money and that are much more empowering. Okay, now I'm on my soapbox. Let me read some of these comments. Sorry, y'all. I got a little worked up. Yes, releasing trauma, absolutely, Monica. Like, I was interviewing Todd Malloy. I've interviewed him before about sexuality and relationships. But in our conversation this week, he was talking about how we experience micro traumas. And if you realize how much trauma we endure, from the teasing on the playground or being bullied by your own brother or sister to the stuff we see in the media, walking down the street, that trauma, if we don't release it, it affects us. And yeah, anyway. So I didn't know that the DO, the doctor of osteopathy, started off in Missouri. Well, okay, I'm going to give a little shout out to Missouri. I would normally say it's misery, but I won't do that again. So Audrey says, the French medical system doesn't really believe in alternative medicine either. Acupuncture treatment would do wonders for addicts in the armies. Yeah, the PTSD, you're absolutely right. And there are a lot of people using, you know, breath work, acupuncture, and all sorts of other release modalities for PTSD for our veterans. And yeah, God, I could go on and on and on. Most money is in regular medicine, says Margareta. There's no money in holistic care. Yeah, because you're right. It's the way that the pharmaceutical industries are set up. I mean, they are running things. And the number of people who are programmed to believe that when we're sick, we need a pill. If we want to prevent disease, we need an injection. If we don't know what's going on with us, we need someone else to investigate and fix us. Now, there's certainly a place for medicine and surgery. If you break something, you might need to be operated on and get them to stick it back together. But there's so many things that we can treat ourselves. Maureen says, you believe there's no illness known to man that does not have a natural cure. And Anne says, the U.S. has many struggles ahead with healthcare, but there's a light in the U.S. with a stream of integrative practices. Absolutely. And that's really what my practice was based on. And the other sort of thing that kind of, what time is it? You know how y'all know how I get. I start to run in my mouth. But one of the other things that really opened my eyes was being pregnant. Hey, Beth, how are you? So when I found out I was pregnant, I was still kind of in my teetering between regular medicine and Chinese medicine. And Margareta, you know where I'm going with this. I started off my journey with an OBGYN, obstetrics and gynecology practice, went for the first couple of checkups. And then I heard about, wait for it, type it in, Margareta, I heard about a way that you could deliver your baby without pain, without screaming, and without an epidural. What am I talking about? Come on now. Is Margareta still here? Is she here? It was through hypnobirthing. Yeah. So remember we were talking about what we're programmed to believe? There she goes. We're programmed, right? You see all the movies where people are screaming as they deliver babies. But because I'm kind of a research nerd and I love studying other cultures, somewhere in my pregnancy, very early on, I started learning about different parenting styles. I was reading every parenting book under the sun because I wanted to get it right, the old perfectionist. And I started learning about attachment parenting and, keeping the baby close to you and strapping them on like these women do in Africa and various parts of Africa where the women are pregnant and they're out there working in the fields doing their thing and they might feel that twinge. Okay, it's not everyone, but squat down, deliver the baby, strap the baby on and keep it moving. And there's not that sense of having to be up in the hospital and you're breathing and you're, no offense if that's been your experience, but I'm just saying, I found out that that whole cultural myth was programmed into us. And so when I started to hear that hypnobirthing, using the power of hypnosis and your breath, you could avoid all of that drama and pain. Now, I'd already experienced the power of hypnosis, you're gonna think this is crazy, with tattoos and piercings. I just learned how to be able to displace pain, such that I remember from my last piercing, nothing crazy or weird and erotic, but like I didn't have any bleeding and I didn't have any pain. And the piercing guy was kind of looking at me like, that's weird. Same thing when I got tattoos. I could just sit there and I would just breathe and displace. I would just literally imagine the pain over on a wall or poof out into space. And I was working in a women's health clinic in Washington, D.C. And this was really, really, really in the hood. And I was doing kind of reproductive health and wellness checkups. And some of the women who had either miscarried a baby, they were in the process of having a miscarriage, they needed to have what's called a D&C, dilation and curettage. Not very pretty for a Facebook Live, sorry. But if you can imagine being in this DC clinic, some of the women or girls didn't have enough money for the really good knockout medicine. Now, I've never had a D&C, never had to go in and have that procedure. But you can imagine it's pretty painful. And to not get the numbing medicine, So one of the doctors there was like, oh, Dr. Pennington, you're into all this meditation stuff. Couldn't you do some breathing and meditating for these women so that they feel less pain? And I was like, absolutely. And so I would help them do what I did when I got my tattoos, which sounds a little crazy, right? But I would help them with their breathing and help them just displace or blow away the pain, and not hold on to it, not get emotionally attached to it, not resist it and judge it and all of that mindfulness stuff. And sure enough, the women were getting through the procedure with much less pain, much less bleeding, much better follow-up afterward. And you can imagine, I mean, it's such a, for most women, it's a sensitive and somewhat traumatic experience. So to be that compassionate physician holding their hand and breathing with them and allowing them to just get through it with grace was a real gift. But like you, Margareta, I did hypnobirthing for the birth of Sienna. The only thing I regret was I got this TV contract because I had just finished with Discovery and I'd been on Oprah and I was doing all this TV, and I got a TV deal to do, I don't know, I don't even remember what the original contract was for, but I met with the president of the network. At the time it was this thing called Lime, Healthy Living with a Twist, and then Lime got bought by Gaiam, which is now Gaia. So I was sitting down with the head of the network, and I had not told them I was pregnant yet, because between the time we negotiated the contract and got the contract, I was pregnant. So I'm sitting there with them, and after everything was like agreed, got my show, got my contract, I'm, producing my own thing, they asked me about timing and when we could start shooting. And I was like, we might need to hurry up before And that's when I told them I was pregnant, because I didn't want to be all getting fat on camera and then be like, what's happening to her, right? She's supposed to be all healthy. And there was this really hilarious moment. Sorry, the sun is setting here, so I'm going to move over here. There was this very funny moment where we were sitting there and everything got really quiet at the table. And the head of the network kind of looked at the production guy, and he looked at her, and they looked at me, and they said, "Can we cover your pregnancy?" And it was like, ooh, we could be at your wellness center, so while you're taking care of patients, we cover the behind the scenes of you working with patients, but also you as you're going through your pregnancy. And I was like, yeah, a reality docu-series covering my pregnancy. Because I had, at this point, transitioned. I was going to make it all natural, and I wasn't working with those doctors. I had met a midwife. It was like, yeah, let's show the world what's possible when you have a natural pregnancy. So everything is going pretty well. I did, my first few episodes as I'm starting to get big, and we're working with some of my clients in the wellness center, which was great for the wellness center. And then showing me going through the birth, the process at a birthing center with midwives. And, the whole thing from nutrition to vitamins and, yes, the hypnobirthing, going with me to the classes and having the cameras there. Now, early on in pregnancy, I felt fine. But there came a point where I started to get tired, and Sienna was like kicking in my ribs, and I had to sleep sitting up. I couldn't even sleep at night. She would just she was like throwing bows or kicking. I don't know what she was doing. And so I started to get really miserable. So by the end of the pregnancy, when I'm like big and heavy and it's hot, it was in, I delivered in May in DC, so you can imagine, hot and humid. I was like so over it. So when they were like, okay, the producers are here and the cameras are here, it's like, oh my God, I didn't have the energy to be like, all put together and whatnot. Anyway, long story short, yes, I went through, I did my hypnobirthing. And I would say just go and, buy the DVD. Don't bother. It is still available on Gaia and Gaiam. It's even sold in America at like Walmart and Target. It's still selling. But anyway, don't have a baby on national television, okay? That's all I'm saying. Because everything was going well. I was doing my hypnobirthing. I was doing my breathing. I had my coach there. And it was perfect timing. My friend Faith had just flown in from Atlanta to be there for the birth the very few hours after I went into labor. It was like magical. Like Sienna, my water broke on the actual end of my 40 weeks. It was bizarre. So my dad flew in, my friend Faith was there, I had my hypnobirthing coach, Blanche Williams was there, and I'm doing my thing, everything's golden. Until, I'm dilating, everything's going well. Her head was not going to clear these little hips. And pretty soon the midwife was like, I know you don't really want to do all that pushing stuff. You're doing your hypnobirthing, aligning to the rhythm of your contractions. But they're like, look, this baby needs to come out. The long and short of it is, in the middle of the night, they were like, it's too many hours with, I had to go to the hospital in an ambulance. It was like, oh, no, my perfect birth experience on camera. Anyway, ended up going to the hospital. It was in the middle of the night, so they're like, oh, we're going to give you an epidural. I'm like, no, I was supposed to make it with no epidural. And they're like, look, you need to rest because either in the morning you're going to start pushing and we got to get this baby out or you're going to have a C-section. It was like, oh my God, I was so tired. So, yeah, epidural, bummer. So by the next morning, it was hilarious because the doctor came in and, oh God, it was awful. There I am, I'm kind of like tired. It's like 8 in the morning. I had basically been in labor for 30 hours. And granted, the first several hours were not bad because I was doing the hypnobirthing thing. But at the end, when I'm like, the baby's head will not clear. So the doctor walks in and she's looking at my chart. And she looks over at me and she recognized me. You know that look that you get when someone is like, I know you. And I'm like, oh my God. Here, I'm all laid out, looking a hot mess. She's seen me on TV and I'm just like, oh God, this is not the time you want to be famous. Anyway, the good news is she kind of looked at me and she heard the case. Okay, she was doing hypnobirthing. She doesn't really want to da-da-da-da-da. So she basically said, we're going to deliver this baby. And I kind of looked at her. She had this look of determination in her eyes. And yeah, I was a beautiful hot mess, Margareta. And fortunately for Dr. Bernard, she was able to safely deliver my little Sienna. And I did not have to have a C-section, and all was well. Carol, you say you love birthing stories. I haven't told this story in years because I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that with cameras in the world? Anyway, so it's all documented in the docu-series that I co-produced with Gaia called Simple Steps to a Balanced Natural Pregnancy. Voila. Anyway, so that experience with hypnobirthing and really my whole transition away from the traditional medical model into this idea that our mind, our body, and yes, our babies. Oh, that was the other thing I did. Crazy. I can't believe I did this on TV. I met someone who does past life regression. And when she found out that I was pregnant, she said, you can contact the soul of your baby. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like really good TV. So we did. Like, we literally did. She took me through a process to speak to little Sienna. Anyway, hilarious. I haven't told this in a long time. So Maureen says, it's similar to your birth story with your daughter. Oh, you had a doula and you were planning to do breath work. and you ended up with a C-section. Sometimes, what are you going to do? It is what it is, and you've got a beautiful daughter, so that's all that matters, is that she's here, she's healthy. Yes. And you say you too, Margareta? So anyway, this was this was not where I was planning to go with this conversation. Geez, we were talking about leap of faith. Well, that's really what my whole experience crossing over into being a light worker, an energy healer. All of this stuff has been amazing, and it's particularly amazing to see the link between the science now. Like the science is catching up with all of the spiritual and the energetic stuff. And yeah, they may not all want to admit it because it does put at risk the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry. But the reality is, when we go vegan, when we start tapping into our own power to heal, the placebo effect and the nocebo effect are real. Yeah. So, Margareta, you said past life regression, you too. So you too while you were pregnant? Or since? Anyway. So, yeah, please do not check out the video, Trevor. No. It's not any video you need to go searching for. Don't buy the DVD. Do not show up at my next event saying, hey, autograph this. Don't. No, I'm not ashamed of it, but it's just funny because when I was saying at the very beginning of this, when I published my book and I was talking about the law of attraction, it was before the movie The Secret. It was before the book The Secret came out. In fact, they were just months apart. Like my book was out and done before that took off. But I was still scared of what people would think if I talked about the law of attraction. But I talked about it in my first book. And yeah, I think, Trevor, you got a copy of that, didn't you? The Pennington Plan. But I was so much more timid in that book because it was like I still wanted to please, that whole side of the industry. And I didn't want them to think I was woo-woo and not evidence-based. But now that we really understand the laws of the universe completely supersede the laws of Earth, meaning you can go outside of what we would call the laws of this planet. I know, I'm getting a little way too far off into esoterica, but I think it's important for us all to be open-minded and start looking at the various cultures, like indigenous cultures and other spiritual traditions who have taught this stuff for millennia. Like we are just catching on, and especially as the scientific literature starts to show that this stuff is real and it can be trusted. We are jumping on the bandwagon and recognizing that the power of our thoughts, that the power of the energy that we radiate and emit from our heart is more powerful even than that which we emit from the brain. When we start to look at other cultures, like the indigenous people, the Aborigines in Australia, for example, or the people in South America or the Native Americans, there's so many cultures who are still really well connected to nature. If you look at some of the sub-Saharan Africa, there's so many places. And I think that my contribution to the world, if I were so bold to call it that, is I really want to explore that through documentary films to show what this current generation is waking up to and what's possible for humanity when we become more conscious of who we really are and start living in alignment with our nature. I was talking to someone who founded a company called Nature Genetics, and Gulli Gudmundsson from Iceland has literally cracked the code on our nature and genetics and how the position of the planets, the moons, and the stars influence us. And when we live in alignment and in harmony with our nature and the nature around us, we can thrive. And we don't have to feel like we're a weirdo when we really embrace who we really are. So, I have no idea what time it is. You see, you guys are saved today. Or maybe you're not saved. Normally I would jump off Hey, Lindia, haven't seen you in a while. Happy holidays. Normally, I would run away because I'm usually either getting Sienna from school or something like that, but she's out with her friends today, you know, celebrating life. So I have no idea if I've been on here for an hour, but I try to limit myself, so I'm going to say goodbye after I read your comments. So Beth says, Siena, Italy was one of your favorite places. Mm-hmm. It is beautiful. And yeah, she has a tie to that name. And Shay Ole says, you're sounding right on target to you. Spirituality is unseen science. Yes, it is. Hey, Dr. Juicy Jill, it is what I'm all about, you know. I was talking with this lovely woman, Solveig Thorarinsdottir. She's the co-founder of Nature Genetics. And just talking to her earlier today about what 2018 is going to bring us. Hey, Joe. Hey, birthday lady. And what would happen if we decided, I'm going to like up the ante. I'm going to really step up and push myself to express more of the potential that I have. And like the lovely Joe Simpson talks about, living in alignment with our values. What would happen if we as a community were willing to say, hey, I honor you and your values and what you stand for. Let me support you in your growth to get to that next level of your life's expression. And what I feel is it's just this deepening of my spiritual purpose, if you will. I call it my dharma. My true life purpose is really to be in this space of expanding global consciousness, bringing more love and awareness to the planet. And it all starts with knowing who you really are. I want to help people awaken to who they really are, not who we have been programmed to be or who we have molded and folded ourselves and tried to portray ourselves as, but who we really are. So a lot of the people that are in this book, you know, like Solveig, like so many of these other people who have stepped up and decided to share their truth, it's like this affirmation that says we're all individuals, we all matter, we don't have to conform and be living in any sort of fake lifestyle according to society standards, because actually all that stuff is crumbling anyway. This is the age of us living in alignment with our truth, our values, with our desire for true happiness and success that's not externally created or focused or measured. It's an internal job. And that to me inspires me. I'm really inspired for all of that. So, Ann Taylor says, Nature Heals. Your company is on a journey to share evidence-based music cure. Music as medicine in hospitals. I love that. Yes. It was our mind-calming tool. I love it. Music is, gosh, music saved my life. Like, for real, for real. I know you guys probably don't know who that was. That was, what's his name? Lil Lewis. House music, that's a whole nother story. But music has saved my life in so many ways. And when I'm feeling low, I don't even want to tell you what my playlist is. But I have a range of music that totally changes my energy, my vibration, and I know it affects my brain chemistry. So Anne, I'd love to hear more about that. Hello, Sinitra. I hope you will watch the replay and get some of the goodness, because we went crazy deep today in a way that I wasn't expecting. But that's what happens when I connect with you. I know that you all have different needs and wants and desires, and you start to pull stuff out. So I will leave with this last thought, knowing that we all have the power. Oh, Margareta, you don't even want to know. The power that each of us has to influence the energy and the vibration in the field. I would love it if we could all send some healing energy. I have a very dear friend in the United States. Let's just focus on the Midwest region, you know, kind of where I grew up. I grew up in Aurora, Colorado, and I recently connected with some people there, and one of them could really use our love and our energy for a procedure this week. So I want you all to just imagine sending from your heart the wish and the intention that everything goes smoothly. And you just see her body filled with light, see her, you know, getting up from that hospital bed like, I feel great. You know, let's pray blessings over the hands of the surgeons and the nursing staff and everyone involved. If you all would just kindly hold the intention for her well-being, I know she'll feel it. De rien, autre. Avec plaisir. And if we could also send, again, the healing intention to my lovely friend Gaga. You usually see me with my smiler on, but I dropped it. I broke the little chain. Gaga recently had her right arm fused and connected because she fell, so let's send some more healing energy and the intention that she will have a perfect recovery so that she can get back to creating art. So just know that we all have the power to send out those healing intentions. And I know I mentioned it last week about getting together in groups of 8 where we could practice these intention experiments, as in the book by Lynn McTaggart, The Power of 8. I just think if we collectively decide that we're going to hold a vision of people in this tribe, people in the rest of the world, hold the vision of them waking up, of them ascending into a higher expression of who they are as divine beings, seeing them as divine beings, not as the trifling ego whatever that they might be acting like now, but really connecting with the soul and the heart of the people on this planet who need us. I know that we can make a difference because you've made a difference in my life. Your presence here has allowed me to just be me and to show up and to do this deep hashtag hippie shit, in the words of Taz Thornton, doing what I love and connecting people with just amazing people around the world. So I thank you. I thank you all. And I wish you a fabulous rest of your day. Now, for those of you who are on my boot camp, go ahead and do your homework now. I will see you at tonight's Q&A for the authentic personal branding bootcamp Q&A. All right. Much love to you. You are so welcome. I thank you so much for being here. Please watch the replay if you're just joining and share this with someone else who needs to know the power that they have over, mind over matter and their power to heal and to get up. It is truly our time to rise. So look out for the interviews coming your way from the Time to Rise Ask the Author series. There's some wonderful people who are sharing, and the book is currently on pre-orders, so you can buy it. The Kindle is only $2.99, and it will be delivered to your device on December 12th, and the print version will be out probably in a week, also for pre-orders, so you can get Christmas gifts and give the gift of inspiration and love. It is our time to rise. So, yes, I will see you, Zazie, in our Q&A in just a little while. And Trevor, I don't know if you're going to join us too, but I will see you there. And anyone else, Shimoni, I know you're in the heezy with me. So, much love, my friends. Bye.